So we're going to talk today about selecting the right customer. And that is such a huge thing for clients. And I'm going to open up with a quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. Um, and it is uh, by Peter Drucker. And it says, the purpose of a business is to create and keep a customer. So if we, break down business, this is at its core, we have to create and keep customers. I would go one step further, and I know I am not as smart as Peter Drucker, but I think we have to create and keep the right customers. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And I think he would agree with me. He's just trying to simplify things. But we have to get the right ones because this is absolutely critical. Because all sales are not created equal. And that's where, you might think, well, that's not right. But if you think about, I'm just going to go to an extreme. If somebody came in, if you sold product, and somebody came in and says, okay, I want a one-time, I'm going to just clear out your inventory. I need all this product. It would be a huge cash flow windfall for you. But it might take you 2 months to restock, and you would lose the rest of your customers because they gotta have their inventory. And so that is a real simple way of thinking about this. That sale doesn't cover everything else. I mean, it's going to really hurt you. And this gets into the, what is the purpose of the business? Create and keep customers. Well, we're going to lose those customers. And when you start thinking about the lifetime value of a customer versus a one-shot deal, the lifetime value of a customer is huge. If you can keep a customer for 3 years or 5 years, that's great. Keep them 10, that's much better. And if it's the right customer that you can keep for 30, 40, 50 years, that makes the value of your business so much larger. If you sell $10,000 a year to this one customer in 40 years, that's $400,000. And all of a sudden we start thinking about our businesses in a little different way. And that's what we want to do today. So like I said, getting the right customers is really huge, and cost of acquiring customers is significant also. And that's why if we can get them and hold on to them, then we're much better off. Next week, I think I'm going to talk about delighting our customers as opposed to just satisfying them. And again, this gets into how do we keep the customers. So that's what we're going to work on going forward. So what is, our customers, or who is our customer? And that's something that it's that's not what I wanted. Sorry, I picked the wrong one. Okay, here's the outline of our talk today, and I think you should have gotten a copy of this. And who is our customer? And I want to start off with a quote from this book called The Inside Advantage by Robert Bloom. And he says, who our customer is, our core customer is the one that's most likely to buy your product or service in the quantity required for optimal profit. And he's basically saying the secret to our business is locked inside our customers, and then what were our product offerings, how we sell it, and then how we capture it for good. It's a great book, and I highly recommend it. But I really like his definition of a core customer, because that is who's buying it at the optimal profit. And so along those lines, we have to think about who is our customer the one we're selling to, or is there an end user who we have to factor in? Who are we marketing to? These are the kind of things that start getting into what our definition is. And we're going to get in a little more detail in a minute. And it's, like I said, same time, we have to be clear as to what we are selling. We can't select the customer and then not have clarity on exactly what we're selling. So these things go hand in hand. So let's talk about how do we define the right customer. And to do that, we're going to look at a little questionnaire that I put together, and it's you should have, again, you should have received this, but this is just to get you started. And this is something that, you know, are we selling to businesses or individuals or both? You know, like in my case, I'm a CPA firm. I sell both to businesses and individuals. My core customer is a small business owner. I have defined that. And so I've further defined it as generally between 5 and 50 employees. And it doesn't really matter the industry. I just don't get into a lot of highly regulated things because I don't have the bandwidth to handle it. So I've defined that because that's what fits me. Now I sell to individuals, and this is where we got to think about this. I sell to individuals also. I sell tax returns. That's not my core. And so when I start thinking about it, if a new individual comes in and wants to pay $1,000 for a tax return versus a new business for $1,000, which one am I going to take? Because the business is going to possibly provide ongoing work throughout the year, where the individuals is all tied into one part of the year into a 3-month period, or actually about a 60-day period. So this is where you got to start thinking about it. Now, each of your businesses is a little different, but we need to know what our strategy is. And so, you know, if it's a business, we need to think about, do we have multiple sites and end user, or do they resell? All of these are key pieces. And the other piece here that is a little subtlety, but who are you selling to in the business? Are you just selling to the business, which could happen? Or is there a specific person you're targeting with this? You know, like if you're targeting the CEO, that's one thing. You may be targeting the purchasing agent, which may be better for you, or the marketing director, or the HR person, or, you know, again, it doesn't matter who you're targeting. The point is, if that's who your best spot is, then everything needs to be geared that way. That's why we have to define this as specific as we can. You know, are there industries that would use your product? Are there some that don't want to? Are there some that you don't want to touch because it's more trouble than it's worth? You know, like I wouldn't sell any, if I was selling product unless I needed to, I possibly wouldn't sell to the government because there's a lot of hoops you got to jump through. Now, if that's your business and you want to sell it through the government, that's fine. But again, these are just decisions you need to make. And then just think anything else, you know, for businesses to become great customers. You know, if it's an individual, are you primarily selling to males, females? Maybe it doesn't make any difference, and that's fine. What age range? You know, think about something like Disney World. Who are they selling to? And the answer is, well, they're sort of selling to the parents, but they're really selling to the kids who will nag their parents into taking them. You know, and again, whether that's moral or what, but the point is they have a clearly defined niche on what they're doing. And, you know, does somebody need specific knowledge to use your product? These are the kind of things we have to think about. You know, does it take an engineer to use your product or whatever it is? So walk through some of these things, you know, and then for both, whether it be business or individuals, are you selling over the internet or in person? You know, these are the kind of things, how we're going to sell and the products, because it's going to start giving us information about the customer. You know, do we want a customer that's just in our state? And, you know, because we're having to charge sales tax, we don't want to mess with other state sales tax, maybe. Okay, that's fine. That's part of your vision, whatever that is, and so that's where we have to start thinking these things through. And this is not a complete list. Each of your businesses is a little different. There's a couple other specific things for each of them that might come into play. But I just want to encourage you to walk through it. So when we go back to, we've defined our customer, then we have to evaluate our customers because we already have existing customer list. Who are our customers right now? And one of the things that is kind of an easy or a neat way of looking at it is doing what we call an ABCD analysis. And that is, and again, I think you got a copy of this. We just defined a little bit of, and I'm just throwing numbers out here, so this doesn't mean anything, but an A customer might be one that buys 10,000 a month from you, B 5, C 4, and a D 1. And again, there's different characteristics here, and I just made things up. But you could have an A customer could be a lower profitability customer, but they're buying so much more that that's a good thing, and they have growth potential. And like the difference between B and C might be the growth potential. C may be capped out at 4,000. They're never going to go above that. Whereas B, we might be able to move them up to an A customer, or how easy they're to deal with, or there's a risk. Again, this ties back to all of those other characteristics we just talked about. You need to walk through and define what's right for you. But like in our case, D customers are very suspect. They may get fired because they're creating problems. They're not profitable. They're hard to deal with, and it's just going to be a risk. Everybody needs to be thinking about this as far as customer profitability, all of the various pieces. The other part of this, though, is thinking about your business in total and what is right. Is it okay to take a low margin sale or a customer that's a low margin? The answer is yes, in the right scenario. Like in my case, if I take on a business or a project that's going to be in the summer or fall where I otherwise might not have anything to do, then even if I didn't make quite as much money, it would still be a good thing. Because again, the total is more important than the detail. So you got to think about this. You got to think about product lines and groups. You may make, one customer may buy a lot of one product and it's not as high a margin, but it's helping keep your business going so that then you have some customers that do buy it. So you got to look at not just the individual customer, but also the groups of them and the whole package. And then you got to worry about concentration too. So those are the things that, from an evaluation standpoint, every business is a little different on what you need to do. You just got to but you do need to do this because the impact of having the wrong customer can be significant. They can be unprofitable. I bet all of us have unprofitable clients that would shock us. If you really go through an analysis. Then some create problems with your team. Some are just difficult to deal with. And you wonder why you have turnover of your customer service people. Well, it's because this one customer just is a real pain. Again, this is where we start looking at this ABCD thing. Some of them impact your cash flow. And that's a huge piece here. If you might have a good customer or you think is a good customer that pays in 60 days, well, it may be killing your cash flow. And then just the general risk. Maybe they're just somebody that uses your product dangerously, and it could create some other issues. So we need to be thinking about the downside on some of these. And sometimes we're much better off with customers that go away. So what's the key takeaway? The key takeaway with all this is we have a need to be intentional. We got to try to create what we want in our business. And I'm going to do one last screen share. I've done a few more than normal this time. And this one is a quote by Peter Drucker. And it's the best way to predict the future is to create it. You know, and I opened up with a quote by him about the core purpose of a business, to create a customer. You know, but this is also our best way to predict the future, is to be intentional about all of these pieces. And if we're intentional about what we're doing with our customers, then we're creating our future, and we know what's coming. And it really, I mean, obviously there's things like COVID-19 that can throw a monkey wrench in everything, but you can minimize those impact by doing these things. So that's pretty much what I wanted to get into today. Now I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. If you have any, please put them in the chat box, or you can shoot me a quick email, and I'll answer that. Let's see. So does anybody have any questions on this? Because I know I went through this fairly quickly. Let's see here. Oh, okay. I have arguments with my team about lower profitability customers. I think they take capacity, and yeah, they do. And this is where we have to be intentional about it. Maybe you have to keep the lower profitability customers for a while, you know, but when you start focusing on who are the customers you really want, you know, some customers are just a nuisance, and like in our case, it's a compliance issue, and they just here to get a tax return done. There's no loyalty to me. There's no, you know, they don't care. I'm not making as much money on them. I may keep them for a while, but at some point, my focus is going to be on getting the right customers for me. And that's what I'm doing. And I think all of us have to be intentional about that. Let's see, the other part of this question is, you know, how do we get our team to focus on getting the right customers? I think most of the time, the problem with getting the right customers and getting the team to focus on it is that most of the time it's the owners are the ones that are fuzzy. They just want sales. They want cash. They want, you know, we just got to sell. And when we're clear on what we want and what we will allow, you know, then all of a sudden, all these other things start falling into place. And so if I'm clear with my team, and I've gone through this with my team as to what I want and what I don't want. And we do a formal ABCD analysis, not every year, but pretty much every other year. And, you know, we clean things up, and we really are pretty happy with our client base. And so we clean them up, and then the team knows it. And so they understand that. So it's really about clarity and communication. And that's my view. That's my experience on that. Let's see, anything else? I sell a lot of, you know, somebody sells a lot of small items. They don't know all your customers, you know, because does this still apply? And I think the answer is yes. I think it's harder to make it work. Like in my case, I know all my customers, but when you sell a bunch of generic things to others, I think it's even more important though to get this really clear, because you need to have an idea who you're targeting. And, you know, there's some big businesses, they have names for their, you know, their model customer. I can't remember one off the top of my head, but it was, you know, it was kind of funny how they would call this model customer, you know, Sally or whoever. And the point is, they knew their characteristics. They know they go to the store twice a week. They know they've defined all of that, and that's where if you're selling a bunch of things to a whole bunch of people, you need to be sure who's the buyer, because that's how all of your product, your marketing, your sales, all your messaging is going to be geared in a certain way that's going to help influence that person. If you're just saying, throwing it out there and saying, oh, here, come buy, well, everybody's going to have a different little trigger for why they're going to buy. So I think this is something that it's important even in those situations, and then you got the opposite is the case too. Say you sell to just a few customers, and maybe I've had a couple of clients where they sold to 60% of their businesses to one business. That's when you have to be very, very careful, and obviously you're held captive with that business, and so you need to watch what your percentages are and what your exposure is, and you do need to continually try to diversify, because this is part of the risk of a client analysis. How much concentration do I have in one business? And that's where, when a business is sold, then you got a problem. Like when AB was sold to InBev, 10 years ago, AB suppliers, they got hammered because they were too far into AB, and then InBev abused it. So that's where I think we have to be very careful. We have to be intentional about how far we go with it. Okay. Let's see. Any other questions right now? Oh, let's see. Oh, here's one. How do you view customers outside of your target range? So say you've gone through all of this. This is a great question here. You've gone through this analysis. You know exactly who buys your product. And then all of a sudden, somebody else says, I'm interested. What do you do with that? And the answer is, obviously, you want to sell to them if you can, but you have to look at the impact on the rest of your business. As long as it's not disrupting the rest of your business, and as long as it's obviously legal and all that stuff, then yeah, there's nothing wrong with doing it, but that's not where you're pursuing it. And so this is where we have to look at the different situations. Part of it depends on cash flow. Maybe they're going to drain your inventory. Well, again, that's something that, can you afford to do that? So we have to be very careful with that. Let's see. Oh, here's another one. We sell through distributors and get little input about end users. Any idea how to get user information? This is a really good thing to work on, and there's no perfect answer, but and the distributors sometimes don't like to let you see into their business because they don't want you selling direct. This gets into a trust situation, but if you can develop that trust, then you can meet with your distributors and say, okay, hey, how can we help you? You're selling to the distributor. The distributor is your customer. It's not the end user, but it is your customer. And you start thinking about how you can better serve them. And that's the part that when you start adding value, and we're going to talk about that a little bit next week, but when you start to really add value to your distributors, they're going to buy even more, because chances are they're not buying all of your product that they could sell. They may get some from somewhere else. So if you're doing other product or other things that will help them, you're putting together training videos, or you're putting together promotional videos, or helping them in some other manner, they're going to help you understand who the end user is. So that's been my experience. Let's see. Any other questions right now? One last one, I think. How can I afford to be picky when sales are down because of COVID and all the other things going on? And the answer is, this is a judgment call. You can't afford to take on the wrong stuff, though, and that's the part that you got to be careful, because in my business and in all your businesses, if we take on a sale that we shouldn't, we end up with bad debt, or we end up with slow pay, or we may end up with having to much lower profitability. And like in a service business, if I chew up time doing that, I'm not available when a good opportunity comes along. So we have to be very, very intentional about this. This is something that I really encourage businesses to almost get to a point where they approve new customers. I mean, actually, a formal approval process is a good thing. So if the salesperson sells something, it's got to be approved by the management team. And again, this is now, and if you're selling a bulk items to a variety of different people, this isn't appropriate. But the point is, for those that are selling to a particular business or individual, get approval so we know that this is going to fit with what we're trying to do. And if it doesn't fit, then maybe okay to take it, but we just need to know what our risk is. So any other questions today? I think that was pretty much it for what I got. Anyway, it's almost 11:30, so I want to thank you all for being on here. And if you have anything else that pops up, let me know. Just shoot me an email, and we'll have the recording later if there's anything you'd like on that. We are having some difficulty getting this on YouTube and a new website. I don't know what, we're just having some technical issues, but it is getting close. So hopefully that stuff will be there, so we'll have the back history all there. Anyway, thanks again. I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. Thanks.